On the last two objectives, I can be a little faster. Again, on natural resource management, I think the graph that Dr. Sun was showing this morning about how limited the role of forestry in the agricultural sector is, was the basis for a discussion that we need to do something more. And I think, therefore, natural resource management access, productive access to the forest is something that I think was clearly reinforced. But again, where I heard some hesitation was about the incentive systems to do that. Payment for environmental services or other ways of doing that needs to be clarified a little more. Even though I was initially more concerned about whether we have an institutional framework to do so. I think I heard now that there is an institutional framework to do it, but it's how it fits into the overall program. And then the last strategic objective is about the strengthening of the institutions. And of course the objective is more about the decentralized hierarchy of institutions. And I think again there is a consensus around the table that there is still a lot of capacity building required at all levels of the system and on the integration there. And this brings me then to my third area of closing remarks, which is on the institutions. Dr. Sun this morning completed his presentation by saying we need a new phase of policy and institutional reform. And I'm not quite sure whether we talk about new or further development, but it is true that as we get deeper into a market economy, even in difficult areas, your policy, your institutional paradigm, your institutional model changes. And again, the discussion we had here brought some concreteness to that discussion. What do we actually mean by that new institutional model? And it started off in a very soft way by saying, well, don't focus only at the communal level. Obviously, you have to look at the district level, you have to look at the provincial level, and you have to go look at the national level and ensure that that whole chain of management is there. But somebody was highlighting with the correct role for the government. Don't get them into the production side. Somebody was saying they are regulators. They should facilitate. They should ensure that rules and regulations are enforced, but not necessarily, not at all, get involved on the production side because it's distortionary. And I think this was an important point. But then, of course, if the government is not going to do it, then who is going to do it? And this is where a number of ideas came to the table. Very early on in the discussion, we said, let's link to agricultural universities, which is already happening in terms of research and extension. We're getting that support. This is one. The other element of the institutional setup that was highlighted was the farmer organizations themselves and different forms of farmer organizations, depending on how we go. And last but not least, of course, the private sector itself. But again, as Professor was highlighting, it's nice to talk about the private sector, but we have to understand one thing, that is that profitability of private sector engagement in mountain areas is not uniformly guaranteed. There is tremendous transaction costs unless we do the infrastructure development in the first place. So I think this is where we came out, I think, with the institutional model. The approach to investment. I think we still have to work a little further on making the emerging consensus and clarity a bit more explicit and validate that. But I think there was, started this morning about it is a small amount of money that we're talking about. So let's make it sure that it is in an adequate way supporting a limited number of objectives, and therefore leading to comments that were made by 2 or 3 people around the table. Why don't we continue to focus on the mountain areas? Let's not dissipate ourselves and make sure that we, in a certain sense, consolidate what we have, and to the extent that we can do that, in specific areas maybe saturate the poverty reduction requirements in that consolidation process, but at the same time keep an emphasis on the innovation side, so that when these people are coming out of poverty and face new opportunities, that they can adjust to that. And I think this was an important point. But then, of course, what we said also was, in terms of investment approach, that it has to be linked to other programs. And even though there was some discussion whether does the government have a poverty reduction strategy or not, it is important that we finger point which program we're actually linking to, so that it becomes concrete. We are not just rambling. One program which is identified as program 135, but there are obviously other programs, the social safety net program that we're talking about. So this is something that we need to explore further. But obviously, again, in terms of investment approach, it has to be what we are doing, a very adaptable, a very flexible approach, and linked to the policy formulation processes. And my last, very short comment is to deliver this the process, to finalize the design, but also implement it later on. We need a business model to work together. And from this morning, it became clear that obviously the core of the business model is that we are supporting the government priorities, the government systems. We're not going to reinvent the system, not the government system, the country systems. And I'm correct that the country systems, not necessarily the government systems. But that it is not just between IFAD and the government and the farmers. We just had a fantastic session where each one of you were highlighting how relevant the research you are doing actually is for the program, and how you are moving beyond research on action on the ground. And I think this broader partnership in the context of a country program management team, as Atsuko was highlighting, but also supported with a technical assistance group, and all that in close collaboration with our country office here, which is Atsuko and Tom, gives us a very good business model to work with you and to develop that. And with this, I want to thank you for a very good discussion. Each one of you, and of course, Dr. Sun, it's a great honor for me to have met you, and I really enjoyed this conversation, but I cannot stop before I congratulate the stamina of the translators. They've done a marvelous job. So thank you, all of you, and thank you, Dr. Sun.